During my stay in the UK, I came across a word when shopping in Topshop: Oriental patterns. Originally from Hong Kong, Chinese, being a person of color, I felt that the word was heavy. It felt that white people were casting the entire Asia as exotic, disregarding the fact that there are individual countries in Asia, and each of them have their own cultures. If the art looks Asian, then it is simply classified as Oriental. Another dress that Topshop named was Eastern Blossom Frill Dress, lumped us all together as you borrow the Oriental patterns. What is worse is the usage of my culture as a form of profit to designers who firstly are not Chinese, and secondly, they don't have any knowledge and history of qipao. You altered a qipao to make it look sexy, make it look unique, name it Suki dress, a Japanese word used for a Chinese-inspired traditional dress, and sell it for £325. Where is the value given to my culture? For it to simply be subject to consumerism and cater to a white audience is parallel to colonial ideology. I am not able to wear my own traditional clothing because of the distorted meaning given by these designers. My qipao is misrepresented, and because I know how other people view the clothing, I cannot wear them. They have taken the significant value of a traditional clothing and are enforcing the idea of fetishization of Oriental Asian clothing. For decades, European and Asian designers have quoted Asian customers as the region has become an economic powerhouse. Last year, Chinese buyers accounted for estimated 33% of entire luxury good market, a share that is likely to hit 46% by 2025. It's a larger percentage than any nationality, and were responsible for helping luxury brands rebound after years of slow growth. Seeing as Chinese support can either make or break a brand's performance, how the label managed the controversies will be critical for its future success in the market. Most of the big brands tend to practice tokenism.
I don't want to see a designer just do it just because it's the fad. I want them to mean it.
Tokenism can be plain money-making, as in order to look diverse and equal, underrepresented groups are being used, but just for the sake of appearance. In the name of diversity and inclusion, tokenism seems not that bad. But when we are not being valued, and there is no right understanding of our culture, then this needs to change. Dolce & Gabbana published a promotional video, DG Loves China, on the 19th of November 2019, for the first ever runway show in China. The campaign featured a Chinese woman struggling to eat Italian food with chopsticks, looked like an engineer who has limited experience with pasta. The woman in the ad wears a sparkly red Western-style dress rather than a traditional Chinese outfit, like a qipao. The not-so-subtle message embedded in this video is that the Chinese woman embraced European fashion, but she is too uneducated, or perhaps too stupid, to really understand European culture. The narrative was spoken in a condescending way, describing chopsticks as stick-like utensils, saying Sicilian cannoli is too big for Asian. Whoever that can eat spaghetti successfully with chopsticks can receive a high score. I was infuriated by it, how the video portraying traditional culture is incorrect, lack of cultural awareness. Seeing the model struggling with chopsticks feels awkward. Chopsticks is the main utensil I grew up using, but that does not mean I don't know how to use a knife and fork. The campaign did not only make fun of Chinese not knowing how to eat Western food by teaching us how to use chopsticks for that, and on top of that, using chopsticks incorrectly.
我能要一双筷子吗？谢谢。Thank you. This is how I use chopstick.
This promotion video is tokenism. The poster girl is Chinese for obvious reason, but are they using her other than a poster girl? Dolce & Gabbana is a big brand. They should think about campaigning ethnic values, rather than just showing that they are being diverse by adding a Chinese model and that's it. Where is the understanding of my culture? How are you portraying us? Chinese people are a big chunk of the market, but they are not being valued. Dolce & Gabbana's founders, Stefano Gabbana and Domenico Dolce, later released an apology video. They stared into the camera with sullen, serious face and speak in Italian, saying, "We have made mistake in interpreting your culture." It's not the first time Dolce & Gabbana had made racist or otherwise culturally insensitive ads about Asian people. Last year, the brand launched a campaign, DG Loves China, featuring models mingling with poor Chinese people in the undeveloped parts of the country. Chinese internet users complained that the brand was deliberately presenting their country as a third world nation. Looking back at my photos I took in Beijing last summer, the backgrounds of the photo are all the same with the campaign. The Great Wall, Tiananmen Square, and the place that tourists find interesting and different. But what matters is that the concept of hanging out with locals is very unconventional in the sense that the narrative is interrupted by random passby. Even the locals presented in the picture are not Beijingers, but tourists and immigrant workers. The locals wasn't picked randomly. They were picked just because they fit in the stereotype of how Chinese people should supposedly look like. I have chinky eyes, I look Asian, I must be Chinese. I was at the exact same location as the photographer were. And yes, these people do exist, but are they the majority? No. As an international brand, giving out such a misleading message to reassure the stereotype is not okay. Another brand that gives out a message to reassure the Chinese stereotype is Chanel. Photographer Billy Kidd is being criticized for a photo shoot he did in the August issue of Interview magazine that reinforced Asian racial stereotypes. In the spread, an Asian woman appeared to be walking through Chinatown in New York City, wearing a Chanel-branded conical hat that is traditional Vietnamese hat, and carrying a stick with Chanel bags hanging off of it that looks like knockoff products, stereotyping the individual cultures into one. The editorial itself is titled "Cocoa Served Hot," which could be a nod to the illegal or hot counterfeit goods sold in the neighborhood, like fake designer bags. People were infuriated over the image because it seems to associate the Chinatown workers with counterfeit luxury goods. Philip Lim, an American fashion designer of Chinese descent, whose parents immigrated to America from Thailand, said, "These images reinforce several stereotypes that Asian immigrants community work so hard to break from, hawking counterfeit goods. It mocks the actual everyday struggle of immigrants trying to do what they can do to survive in a country foreign to them." Kidd attempted to defend his photo shoot by claiming, "My intentions for this shoot are definitely not to perpetuate a negative view of Asians, but intended to be a homage to the working class Chinese, which was what inspired me. Obviously, it did not translate that way for you and others. My apologies for any offense. However, I love this image and still see it as a homage." At what point do we allow our inspiration to be pushed away? When do we stop allowing the things that we find beautiful to be covered up and not allowed to talk about? It's important that you hear why an image like this is insensitive to Asian communities. Nothing about the image gives me a sense of paying tribute or honoring their hard work. Quite the opposite. It boils down their struggle into a caricature for the sake of selling clothing. On the 3rd of January 2019, Burberry unveiled a global photography campaign, Modern Tradition, that meant to celebrate the upcoming Chinese New Year. The images were produced by Ethan James Green, a talented American photographer who collaborated in the past with other luxury fashion houses. The campaign meant to celebrate China's most revered holiday, a period of time for family reunion, joy, and luck. Instead of celebrating with a joyful tone, the brand chose to create a creepy atmosphere that looks nothing like how a Chinese New Year is supposed to be. At first sight, I thought it was a beautiful shoot, but I remember how my grandma valued Chinese New Year. When I was little, there was a time my grandma was upset because my mom used a pink envelope that was made by some designer brands instead of using the traditional red pockets. I'm pretty sure Grandma won't like the whole altercation of our festival portrayed in this Burberry campaign. During the Chinese New Year, It is unacceptable to mention the word dead or anything related to create this word. The atmosphere of the campaign created is totally against our tradition. Burberry's photograph has a morbid tone that can be interpreted as dead rather than using a traditional celebratory theme. Do the brand really respect the culture by understanding the Chinese New Year? If they know how superstitious Chinese people are, will they still release this campaign? The overall response to Burberry has not been around racism, but instead that the company has missed the mark on the cultural reference, and instead have released an ad which clearly depicts that they lack knowledge of our traditions. These days, luxury brand Chinese New Year capsule edition are under close scrutiny by Chinese shoppers. Brands' lack of appreciation of authentic Chinese culture has recently caused trouble in the promotion of Chinese New Year products. The controversy surrounding this quirky campaign may not be beneficial to these brands. It seems that the fashion industry still hasn't gotten the memo that appropriating and mimicking Asian culture isn't a good idea to begin with.